All right, let's just say it. One last shout out to Ricardo LeBlanc, who really became an Oklahoma favorite as his son, Derrick LeBlanc, ended up committing to the Oklahoma Sooners last cycle. However, today we get the news, and today it is actually, I'm recording this at 10:28 on Monday night. And Derrick LeBlanc has entered the transfer portal for the Oklahoma Sooners. And we got to talk about it. We got to talk about the impact that this is going to have on the team going into the 2023 season and what impact this might have in the future and where Oklahoma should go. But before we dive into it, guys, I want to hear from you. Go ahead, jump down in the comments below. Let me know what y'all's thoughts are. Where does Oklahoma need to go at the defensive line position for the rest of the 2023 season? So, just when Oklahoma really couldn't take any more bad news on the defensive line, where we still haven't seen any official news on Jacob Lacey and whether or not he will be able to play this season for Oklahoma, you get the news that Derrick LeBlanc, he's entering the transfer portal. And for a lot of OU fans, this one sucks because when you look at the defensive line class that Oklahoma put up last year, man, Todd Bates just can't get a break. At first, he's told he's getting a commitment from David Hicks. That commitment backs out. You prioritize a guy like Jordan Renaud and David Hicks and Derrick LeBlanc over a guy like Edric Hill. You don't really ever have a chance with Bai Jobe. And ultimately, the Sooners probably could have taken other guys that might have stayed committed in this class. And ultimately now, Derrick LeBlanc appears to be entering the transfer portal, and from all indications, looks like he might be going back to the state of Florida, going to play for one of those Florida schools. And I say that because if you all remember the recruitment of Derrick LeBlanc had the Florida Gators in his final three. And Derrick LeBlanc was a guy that was highly recruited by many schools across the industry, and a guy that most believe would definitely be a NFL draft pick at one point or another. With over 42 offers, Derrick LeBlanc had offers from the likes of Oklahoma, Florida, Penn State, Alabama, Clemson, Florida State, Georgia, Miami, Michigan, Oregon, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Texas, Texas A&M, USC, and more. Again, 42 offers. That is nothing to scoff at. And Derrick LeBlanc had elite offers. And Derrick LeBlanc really could have had his choice to go anywhere he wanted to. Now, I get it. You guys have seen it on the message boards, and you guys have heard the rumors circulating that potentially Derrick LeBlanc did not want to compete for that starting role with, well, some of the new guys, Deson Terry, Philippia. And you know what? It might be true, but you know what? It's not really our place to get on to the kid for wanting to have a starting spot. I mean, he probably came into Oklahoma with those expectations that, hey, this defensive line needs help and I could step in right away and help, which was a possibility. And I definitely think if Derrick LeBlanc didn't start the season, that he would have definitely made a significant impact, because there would have been lots of schemes where you could have rolled in Derrick LeBlanc, and Derrick LeBlanc could have been a crucial piece, because even though you might not be a starter, you got to have the two deep. So you look at potential destinations for Derrick LeBlanc. I think there's probably three main destinations you got to pay attention to. The Florida Gators, number one, just because they were in his final three, and I feel like Billy Napier would take Derrick LeBlanc at this point. Probably Miami second. And then third, you'd probably have Florida State, right? Those are the three that I would really pay attention to. Obviously, I would imagine Georgia, Alabama, maybe even Tennessee all try to make a run at this kid. He's definitely going to probably have his choice of offers once again. But if you're a coach, you're probably asking the question, why are you transferring from Oklahoma when you haven't even played a single game with Oklahoma? But ultimately, at the end of the day, Derrick LeBlanc's in the transfer portal. So now Oklahoma Sooners and the fans, we have to move on. And the question is, where do we go next? Because not a lot of people have entered the transfer portal, and there's not a lot of defensive linemen left out there. And so the question is, what could they go out there and get? Could you get a guy like Alvin Williams from Colorado? Could you get a guy like Siosa Fianu from Washington? I mean, there's Javon Nelson from Memphis, and I'm just going down the list of what actually is on the transfer portal list of who has recently entered. When you look at it, there's really not a lot left out there. I'm sure Todd Bates, Brent Venables, and the staff, they have their targets, but let's look at the bright side here, right? As Oklahoma Sooner fans, sometimes we have a tendency to be a little negative, especially when things like this happen. Let's look at the positives. The positives are Oklahoma is looking at taking a fantastic 2024 defensive line class. And although Derrick LeBlanc probably will not be here to be a part of that defensive line class, this now opens up another roster spot for Oklahoma to be able to go out there and take another defensive lineman. Because in 2024, this is the last year that I believe you can take 25 or more, well, more than 25 recruits in one class. Next year, it's going to go back down to 25, which is what it was before COVID. So you look at the potential targets that Oklahoma could be taking on the defensive line, and we're going to look at interior specifically because that's where Derrick LeBlanc would have played. You got Williams Nwaneri, the 5-star defensive lineman that everybody wants, number 3 overall player in the 247 composites. You have David Stone, the number 6 overall player, and you got Dominic McKinley, who a lot of people love. Now, I'm going to stick with just those 2 5-stars, David Stone and Williams Nwaneri, but you could potentially get a guy like Nigel Smith. So there locks up 3 spots. Maybe now, instead of just taking Jaden Jackson, you take a guy like Jaden Jackson, make a run at Alex January, the 6'4", 325-pound defensive lineman from Duncanville, Texas. Maybe you also go after a guy like DeAndre Cook from Friendship Collegiate Academy in Washington, D.C., and then maybe even throw out a PWO to Tyler Moore, the 5'10", 290-pound defensive lineman out of Locust Grove, Georgia. And you might say, hey, why do we want that guy? Well, the one thing that Todd Bates has always been able to do, whether it's been at Clemson or anywhere, he's been able to find hidden gems and develop that talent, which is kind of what you saw him try to do in 2023, where he got Marcus Strong and Ashton Sanders. But Tyler Moore could be another example of that, because as a junior, he totaled 79 tackles, 49 for a loss, 15 sacks, 6 forced fumbles, and 5 pass breakups. Now, he's not playing in the most elite of elite school districts, but you look at the production that he's been able to put up in high school, and if Todd Bates can somehow unlock that and mold it and develop that, you've got a really good defensive lineman on your hands. And it never hurts to throw out the PWO and try to take a guy like Tyler Moore. But ultimately, the Oklahoma Sooners, I still feel like, even with the loss of Derrick LeBlanc, have a good direction to go. This just tells them we have one more roster spot that we can utilize, especially on the defensive line going into next year. If I'm Brent Venables, I'm telling Todd Bates, yeah, where you might have had 4 or 5, you now have 5 or 6 scholarships, because we need to fill that loss of Derrick LeBlanc from last year. Maybe they take another experienced portal guy. I don't know what that's going to look like for the Sooners. But guys, I want to hear from you. Go ahead, jump down in the comments below and let me know what y'all's thoughts are. I know the loss of Derrick LeBlanc sucks, but I want to hear from you about where the Oklahoma Sooners should go now that Derrick LeBlanc is no longer going to be an Oklahoma Sooner.